Edwin Canestracci here, back in Black Sabbath, and I'm drinking my favorite scotch, Double Black, yeah, and as you probably figured out, this is going to be the video where I finally talk about not just Born Again, but all those Black Sabbath, or Black Sabbath, albums that came out afterwards. You know, originally I said on my Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules video, I said the third Black Sabbath video I was gonna do was gonna be a Rankorama, and I was gonna do every Black Sabbath album. But to be honest, I have not lived long with the Tony Martin era. I had the Eternal Idol for a while. I had a remastered that. I've had that for a few years. And back in the day, back in the mid '90s, I did go out and get Cross Purposes. But this was like before I was fully indoctrinated into Sabbath. Like, I only had a couple. I think I only had like actually, I don't think I had any Sabbath. I think I just had a mixtape that my buddy Adam Cerniak made for me. And then I went from, and it was a great mixtape. It had like a lot of cool shit. I talked about it in the Black Sabbath Halloween special. That's all I had. And then I think I saw like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I think that was the single from Cross Purposes. And I ran out and I got the CD based on that song. I saw it like on Headbangers Bar or something. And be honest, didn't do much for me. You've heard the story before. Teenage Edwin hears a single and goes out and buys an album, and then Teenage Edwin is like, hey, that wasn't so hot, so I guess I'm not into this band so much. So in this case, I guess you would say it was like Tony Martin era Black Sabbath. Like, that was its chance to get me, and it didn't really get me. Jump several years later, I'm on a deep Black Sabbath kick. By this point, by the mid-O's, I have all their shit with Ozzy. I have all the Dio stuff, and I even got Born Again, and 7 Star by this point. I'm like deep in there, but I'm still a little reluctant about the Tony Martin era. And I sample it, you know, I go on YouTube or whatever, and I sampled it, and it just didn't do much for me. Just too much like kind of power metal, it's not really my thing. No disrespect to the power metal maniacs out there, if that's your thing, if that's your jam, just not really me for the most part, you know? I didn't like all the synthesizers, and it was a little too slick, and Tony Martin I can hear he was a good singer, but to me he was like a bland Ronnie James Dio, like Ronnie James Dio, but without any of the edge and bite and personality. And most of the stuff, the IRS era, it was not readily available. Like, I'd have to spend a lot of money on eBay or the Amazon Marketplace to get these CDs, and they didn't sound so hot to me, so I was like, I could get it. The Eternal Idol, because that was a Warner Brothers release, that was available on iTunes, and I think it still is, and there was a remaster of that, so I got that, and I thought it was all right, but I never really went back to it too much. But recently, after I got the deluxe editions of Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, like, suddenly I'm on this big Black Sabbath kick again, and I, really loving those albums. It's all like, and I've loved those albums for years, but it's just like, it's like a rekindled love, and it's like I want more music like that. So I thought, fuck it, maybe I should dive into the Tony Martin stuff. So I got a good friend, he knows who he is. He hooked me up with this stuff, even though he's not a fan of this era himself. He hooked me up with the IRS albums. So now I got my missing link in the Black Sabbath discography. And this was like a couple months ago. And for a couple months, I've been diving into this shit. And whoa, maybe my opinion has changed on the Tony Martin era. I'm not going to spoil everything, though. I'm not going to spoil it all. You're going to have to wait until I get there to tell you what I think of these albums. But anyway, so I decided, you know what? Because maybe my opinion has changed on the Tony Martin era, I decided, I should give this whole era, including Born Again and some later stuff they did with Dio and Ozzy, out of respect for Tony Iommi, and keeping the brand name at very least alive, throughout the 80s and 90s. You know, I should give this era in Black Sabbath its due respect and do an in-depth analysis of it. And then come Halloween time, I'm going to do another Black Sabbath Halloween special, and that's when I'm going to do the Rankorama. And by that point, I would have lived with the Tony Martin stuff a little bit longer, too, so I feel it'll be a more legit ranking. Whereas now, I might be overly excited because perhaps I like it better than I thought I would. So, hey, so here we go. A guy who's lived with some of these albums for a very long time, and some not so long. But these are my opinions, so get ready. So where we left off with Black Sabbath was with the Mighty Mob Rules, which I loved and still love. Dio and Tony got into a fight over this live album and how he was mixing it, and it all went to shit. And Ronnie James Dio, that is, Ronnie, he took Vinny Appleseed, the drummer, and went off and formed the band Dio, which was awesome, and they did a lot of awesome albums. And one day, I will talk about those albums. But this day, we're going to stay with Tony Iommi. We're going to stay with him, the riff master himself. And him and Geezer, they decide, hey, let's just keep Black Sabbath going. Let's just get another singer. And not only that, one of my favorite drummers, Bill Ward. Yeah. Bill Ward comes back in the band after leaving them briefly during Mob Rules and the Heaven and Hell tour before that. He comes back. So wow, so this musically, this is the original Sabbath. They just need a singer. They just need a new singer. And they get, they get Ian Gillan from Deep Purple, Mark II Deep Purple, In Rock Deep Purple, my favorite Deep Purple album. Ian Gillan's like one of the greatest singers of all time. God, so him singing with Black Sabbath, this is like Deep Purple smashed into Black Sabbath. How could this album not be awesome? Born Again, 1983. And look at that goddamn album cover. Fucking awesome. Satan, baby. Love it. Love that album cover. I love it. It would definitely offend a lot of people, especially in the 80s during the Satanic Panic. And this album, I love it. There, you finally found out how I felt about Born Again. Of course, members of the RMCP Army, you knew I loved Born Again. How could I not? It's fucking raw and dark and sludgy. It's got attitude. It's one of those productions that apparently people back in the day thought was shit and didn't like it. But I don't know, it seems like everyone thinks it's cool now, at least all the headbangers I talk to. It's cool. They are apparently, like Tony finally got the original analog tapes for this, so he's going to remix it, he says. So, I'll listen to that remix. I'm sure it'll be cool, but I don't know if it's going to be better than this, because I love the rawness. It's evil sounding. Dark, sludgy, evil sounding production. This is the more evil sounding than the shit they were doing with Ronnie. In fact, I say this is the doomiest and most evil sounding Black Sabbath album post Master of Reality. Yeah, maybe even more than Master of Reality. Might be even more evil and doomy than that album. Maybe not more doomy, but more evil. Definitely more evil. This is like a new 80s satanic doom that they're doing. I mean, the first song is kind of like the stuff they were doing with Ronnie, Trash, which is awesome. I love Trash. My favorite song on the album. Kicks ass. Just real up-tempo, kind of like Neon Nights and Turn on the Night. It's that up-tempo, let's get the party going song. And Ian's amazing. His vocals fit Black Sabbath perfectly. Very different from Ronnie and very different from Ozzy, but still slides right in there. Great singer for this kind of stuff. Then we got the Stonehenge instrumental, keyboards. First time this cat, what's his name? I got notes here because I always forget the keyboardist's name. Jeff Nichols. Jeff Nichols, this guy, he's going to hang in there for a while. He's essentially Black Sabbath's Dizzy Reed. You know, if Tony Iommi is Axl, and he's the guy keeping Black Sabbath around, then Jeff Nichols is definitely the Dizzy Reed. And to some people's chagrin, it's like, this keyboardist guy, he's always around. But, well, you know, we'll hear how I feel about the keyboards once they become more prominent. At this point, Tony's just using this Jeff Nichols cat to do interludes, little creepy interludes, like Stonehenge and The Dark. Ooh, spooky. It's cool. I like it. I dig it. I like some creepy synth stuff. It's like shit from a John Carpenter movie. Disturbing the Priest. Heavy. One of the heaviest Sabbath songs. Really, I mean, this is fucking heavy. Definitely one of their heaviest songs. It's evil. And Ian's voice sounds fucking crazy. He sounds fucking like a madman. Scary, but cool. I like it. That's awesome. Zero the Hero, which has a riff that, hey, Guns N' Roses ripped off for Paradise City. Badass, but much cooler than that song. Badass Digital Bitch. That's cool. Born Again. Creepy, dark, kind of starts off like a ballad and then becomes like this epic rocker. Love it. Hotline, great. Keep It Warm, great. It's just a great 80s metal album, man. Great 80s satanic evil metal, and I love it. And it's great because, Ian Gillan, Deep Purple definitely did stuff that was heavier, and, they were proto heavy metal, just as important as Sabbath and Led Zeppelin in the foundation of heavy metal. But still, there was never a Deep Purple album where Ian was singing like all heavy stuff. They would mix in some prog stuff and some bluesier stuff and some funkier stuff. So, you never got to hear him sing like a proper heavy metal album from beginning to end. And that's what's cool about Born Again. It's the only time, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only time you ever hear Ian Gillan really sing this kind of music this heavy from beginning to end. And he has an amazing voice for it. He just really shreds and it's powerful. I know he wasn't too thrilled with this, and that baby, the devil baby, made him throw up. But man, he sounds great singing this kind of music, and it's too bad it was just one album. I was like, hey, they could have done a bunch of albums with him and it would have sounded good. But now he fucked off. It was done. He went back with Deep Purple again. And that was it. So Black Sabbath was back to where they were again. And this time, Bill and Geezer, they were out. They're like, come on, 3 singers now. Like, 3 strikes, you're out. They're out. They're like, so more or less, Tony thought Black Sabbath was over. And he started working on what he considered to be a solo album. And that led into 1986's Seventh Star. Now, Seventh Star is the only Black Sabbath album cover that says Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. And there he is, looking cool with the stash and leather. I love it. Black Sabbath should have a song called Stash and Leather. That'd be cool. Anyway, so he thought this was going to be a solo album. So this was kind of a compromise. Like Warner Brothers was like, no. We want it to be called Black Sabbath, so headbangers will go out and buy it. They're not going to buy it if it's just called Tony Iommi. Not as many that would buy it if it was called Black Sabbath. He's like, no. And finally, they compromised on Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. But this, you can hear from the beginning, this is a very different sounding album. It really isn't a Black Sabbath album. It wasn't meant to be a Black Sabbath album. It was something that was forced upon Tony. But I'm counting it because it says Black Sabbath on the goddamn album cover. And more or less, it leads into what would become a new version of Black Sabbath subsequently. So I gotta count it. So there you go. So it's a Black Sabbath album, 7th Star, and he gets another Deep Purple singer. Wow, yeah, another one. He gets Glenn Hughes from Mark III and 4. Glenn Hughes, man, not. I wouldn't imagine Glenn Hughes singing for Black Sabbath, and that's the whole idea. It wasn't supposed to be Black Sabbath, Because Glenn Hughes, he's more of a soul kind of singer, more of an R&B style singer. Like, if anything, David Coverdale was the more rock guy, and even he was kind of more of a soul blues singer as well. But fucking Glenn Hughes, I mean, he was really like an R&B singer, He's singing like funky, like Casey and the Sunshine Band type shit. So he's not the kind of guy you expect to be singing heavy metal. And I don't know if it entirely works, but the thing is, even if Glenn Hughes' voice, I don't think totally gels with the music, I gotta say, his singing is still so great, and it's so interesting. It's enjoyable to listen to. Like, again, he doesn't fit in there the way that Ian Gillan did and Ronnie and Ozzy before him, but it's an interesting sound. It's an interesting sound to hear a guy that's like kind of essentially blue-eyed soul singer singing over heavy metal music. The ballad on it, the synth-driven ballad, No Stranger to Love, and the bluesy song, Heart Like a Wheel, like those songs, Glenn fits like a glove. He's great singing those songs. But the heavy metal stuff, I'm not entirely sold on. But still, it sounds cool. And the songs are great. In for the Kill, that's great. Turn to Stone. That song on its 7th Star, the title track. And that's the one that sounds the most like a Black Sabbath song. That's kind of doomy and cool. I love that. Danger Zone, Heart Like a Wheel, Angry Heart. It's all good shit. It's a really good album. I wouldn't say great, but it's good. It's a good album, and it could have worked as a Tony solo album and probably better than a Black Sabbath album. But it's still 7th Star. It does sound Black Sabbathy enough that it almost justifies this album being called Black Sabbath. But it has much more of a modern 80s sound. That's all I say. It's like a modern melodic metal 80s sound, And it works for the most part. I think it's pretty good. Keeps the party going. I'm like, okay, I'll keep listening to albums, from this artist, from this recording artist, from Black Sabbath. I'll keep listening to it. But then, hey, this didn't work out. Oh, these guys, these middle-aged, saucy British guys, they got a lot of problems. Glenn Hughes, he just was fucking doing a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, and he could barely finish this tour. So that was it. So Glenn was out. So Tony's like, oh God, it's tough keeping these singers. And by the way, Eric Singer, yes, the copycat himself, he was the drummer on this. Yeah. So not bad. At least I think it's the same Eric Singer. Would make sense. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a drummer and his name's Eric Singer, so I'm assuming it's the copycat himself. David Spitz on bass, and Jeff Nichols, becoming more prominent now. This is where he kind of, you actually hear him on proper songs, not just interludes. And this kind of starts to become the sound that Tony embraces in the late 80s and early 90s. And leads into 1987's The Eternal Idol. By this point, Tony had surrendered to the idea that this album was going to be called Black Sabbath. I get whatever happened behind the scenes between him and Warner Brothers. Obviously, they won, and he gave up fighting. It was like, okay, fuck it. This is Black Sabbath. I'm going to call this Black Sabbath, even though I'm the only original member. You can tell, to a degree, it has some of the modern sound that he developed in Seventh Star, but he brings back a little more Sabbath-esque, tones, and it becomes a little more Sabbath-esque, because I think he realizes that this is going to be called Black Sabbath. And it has a little more of that quality to it. It's kind of like a mix. It's like a mix of Seventh Star with Sabbath stuff that he was doing with Ronnie James Dio specifically. It feels kind of like he's going back to Heaven and Hell. It's kind of like Heaven and Hell style music mixed with Seventh Star. Which, sounds pretty cool to me. If you're hip to those albums, that doesn't sound so bad. And he gets another singer, and this is where we get to Tony Martin. Another Tony. Tony. They got a third guy in the band named Tony. They could have been Tony. So there. 90s R&B reference aside, this is about Black Sabbath. If you don't want to hear about Tony, you just want to hear about Tony. That's right. And Tony Martin, this is the thing. He's more or less like what I said originally, that when I heard it's just he's like a bland Ronnie James Dio, and that more or less is the case. He sings in that kind of style, but without the bite, that little nasty wop bite that Ronnie James Dio had. He doesn't bring that, and he doesn't have the same, especially if you watch clips of them live, he doesn't have that kind of charisma. He doesn't have star charisma. That being said, Tony more or less gets the job done. He hits the right notes. He brings in a little of that Ronnie majestic quality. There's a pageantry to his voice, and he gets the job done. He sings well enough and captures the spirit of what the music needs. It makes for an enjoyable experience. Once you kind of get past, he's not as edgy as Ronnie. Once you get past that and accept Tony Martin for who he is, you can really enjoy his singing and enjoy what he brings to the band, especially in the better Tony Martin albums. And this is one of them. I think this is the second best one with Tony Martin. I used to think it was the best, but another later album in recent weeks has really grown on me. But this is a great album. Better than Seventh Star. I wouldn't say it's better than Born Again, but God, it's almost so unfair to even compare this to Born Again. They're totally different bands and sounds. And like I said, this is more melodic. It's more kind of that mystical, a little vaguely power metal-ish, which in a way that Heaven and Hell was a little bit too with Ronnie. Hey, I love Heaven and Hell. I love Mob Rules. I don't mind hearing a kind of a lesser version of that album, because those albums are so awesome that even a lesser version is still going to be goddamn awesome. And this has an amazing production. You hear right out of the gate with The Shining. Yes, inspired by the movie The Shining, which was based on the book The Shining. And man, I love this song. It's what I started this video with. It brings you in. It's majestic. It's got power. I love it. Very cinematic. Brings you in. In fact, this is more like the kind of stuff that Ronnie James Dio was doing with Sabbath and with Dio in the first half of the 80s, more so than what Ronnie was really even doing in the late 80s anymore. Ancient Warrior, cool song. Hard Life to Love. Oh man, that riffage and this thing. Tony, he's still in the fucking zone. He's still knocking out these really fucking choice riffs, man. I love his guitar work throughout. And like I said in my Heaven and Hell Mob Rules video, I think Tony's lead work went to another level in the 80s, starting with Heaven and Hell. Like in the 70s, it was mainly, I mean, I love his solos in the 70s, but it's mainly about his riffs. It's mainly about what he was doing as a rhythm guitarist. Whereas in the 80s, once he started working for Ronnie, his soloing went to a whole other level, and he maintains that level throughout the 80s. And throughout this whole album, there are amazing guitar solos. Glory Ride, that's a great kind of rockin'. That sounds like something that could have been on 7 Star. It's a little different sounding from Sabbath, a little more just like late 80s heavy metal, but I like it. Born to Lose is good. Nightmare, my favorite song on the album. Now this is very Sabbathy. It's sludgy and dark and menacing. Love Nightmare. Scarlet Pimpernel, an instrumental, like those little medieval sounding acoustic interludes on Master Reality, or Laguna Sunrise on Volume 4. It's an acoustic, medieval sounding song, instrumental, and it gives that different shade, and I love the atmosphere. Then Lost Forever, badass heavy metal song, badass, love the guitar work, love everything. And then the title track, Eternal Idol, this is full-fledged, heavy as fuck doom metal. Full-fledged doom, heavy, very Sabbathy. I love it. This is the only song that sounds like it could have been on Born Again. It's tough and mean and dark and evil, and I love it. And this whole album's great. I love this album. It's great production. I think it's their best production. No. There's one other album that I think has a better production than this, but this is probably their second best production post Heaven and Hell, in my opinion. And playing bass was Bob Daisley. Bob Daisley, you know that guy who played on Ozzy's albums? And then Sharon removed him, and then they put him back. It was like, so he's there again. So then we got the 1989 Headless Cross, which is essentially the Eternal Idol Part 2. And it's a good album. I like it. I don't think it's great. It's not as strong as the Eternal Idol. There's a little bit of a drop off, but I dig it. It gets the job done more or less. Fucking Headless Cross. What's with Tony Iommi? It's like he can't stop doing awesome riffs. You know, he just keeps knocking them out. It's like breathing to him, I guess. He just knocks out another awesome classic Sabbathy riff with Headless Cross. Love that song. Then Devil and Daughter. Ooh, that's a cool song. Cool late 80s kind of melodic metal song. Dig that song a lot. Like Tony's vocals a lot on it. It's working for me. When Death Calls. Woo! Heavy song. Powerful. Epic. Love that song. And it has a guitar solo from Brian May of the band Queen, as featured in the motion picture Bohemian Rhapsody, which was a very big hit. So this is relevant. All those fucking people that saw Bohemian Rhapsody should fucking respect Brian May and buy Headless Cross. But they won't, because they're fucking posers. But I ain't a poser. I'm respecting it. Anyway, so there we go. And then this is where the drop-off is. That's the thing. The first half of this album, it's all great. But the second side, Kill in the Spirit World and Call of the Wild, I don't really like those songs. I think they're a little corny. Musically, there's a few parts here and there that are all right, but I don't think they're that great. But then things pick up again with Black Moon. That's a great song. Actually sounds a little like heavier Deep Purple from the early 70s. Like this sounds like it would have been a good song for Ian Gillan to sing. Really like that. Nightwing. Ooh, majestic, epic. Starts off soft and gentle, and then takes you into the night, and it becomes this epic rocker. I love Nightwing. Great song. And I say this is a good album, not great, but hey, it keeps me interested. Keeps me interested in this band they call Black Sabbath. This new Black Sabbath. I will embrace it. I will embrace this as Black Sabbath. Fuck it. Tony Iommi is putting in the work. You know, he's bringing the riffs. He's moving with the times and updating the sound, but not totally giving up the essence of who he is and what his music is about and what his guitar playing is about. You know, if you're kind of thinking of this in terms of like Heaven and Hell being the beginning of 80s Sabbath, it feels like he's got the baton of that, and he's bringing it into the 90s. You know, he's keeping it going with this style of music, and I love it. So then we get to 1990s Tear. Woo! Tear. All right, now let me tell you, this is kind of funny because the thing is, Tony Iommi, the boss, tells his employee, Tony Martin, the singer. Tony Iommi tells Tony Martin, hey, the lyrics on the last album, Headless Cross, like, I know we're Black Sabbath and all, but normally we're not that heavy-handed and corny with the Satan stuff. Like, you were kind of overdoing it a little bit. So, Tony Martin says, okay, I'll come back with something different. So what he comes back with is, hey, how about a bunch of lyrics about Norse mythology? I just laugh because I can only imagine that Tony Iommi must have been like, just rolled his eyes and was like, whatever, mate, let's just make a record. So instead of heavy-handed Satan, you get heavy-handed Norse gods. But, hey, this is probably a groundbreaking album to Viking metal heads, If you're in a Viking metal band, from Scandinavia, I'm sure you love Tyr, as you should, because it's fucking awesome. I can't believe I didn't always love this album. It finally clicked to me, and I totally geeked out to it, and I'm like, this is the best album they did with Tony Martin. This is my favorite Tony Martin era album. It's epic. I love the production. Cozy Powell, great drummer, who came in with the last album. Sorry, I'm not always chronologically correct. I'm drinking scotch. I'm having fun. I ain't Wikipedia. But I got my notes, so I'll try my best. But let me tell you about Cozy Powell. I talked about Cozy Powell in my Whitesnake video, because all roads lead to Cozy Powell. That's what I said. At some point, if you were in Deep Purple or Black Sabbath, these two bands, at some point, you would form another band. It might be Whitesnake, it might be Rainbow, but at some point, you're going to have a side band off of either Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. And at some point, you're going to play with one of the members from one of the other bands. Science. This is a scientific equation here. At some point, everyone from Deep Purple and Black Sabbath play with each other in one of their other bands. And usually Cozy Powell at some point is in one of them. Just saying. At some point, he will that's time that Cozy's here. That makes sense. He didn't do that yet. He didn't do Sabbath yet. So it was inevitable. And he did play drums on Headless Cross. But here he really gets involved, and him and Tony produced this album. His drums are really high in the mix. I love his drums on this album. In fact, I like Cozy's drumming on this more than I wouldn't compare him to Bill Ward. Bill Ward's still number one when it comes to Sabbath drumming, but I actually like Cozy's drumming more than Vinny Appleseed. I think his drumming is a little more powerful and a little more interesting than Vinny Appleseed. No disrespect to Vinny Appleseed. I dig him and I dig his drums, but I actually like Cozy Powell better. Another band connected with this whole incestuous British rock scene is Neil Murray, who was the bassist for Whitesnake. So it's the Tonys, Cozy Powell, and Neil Murray, and they do this epic fucking Viking metal concept album. Anno Mundi, I love this song. Starts off a little like Children of the Sea. It's kind of majestic, and then it goes into that riff, and there's these keyboards. It's almost utilized. The keyboards now are kind of being utilized the way you would hear them in early Faith No More. Kind of like on The Real Thing. It adds a cinematic quality, but I don't think it's that expensive, the music. To me, it's still kind of working. In fact, I don't have a problem with the keyboards. I think the guitars still are punchy and the drums are there. It's a little how also Zeppelin sometimes utilized keyboards in the 70s. I think it's not that expensive, the heaviness. This song's epic, a great opener. Then it gets into The Lawmaker. Man, heavy song, ballsy, tough. My favorite song on the album. I love The Lawmaker. It's goddamn, this ain't no wussy concept album. This is fucking heavy metal music, man. Then you got Jerusalem. Man, Jerusalem is fucking badass. I love that song. It's melodic and heavy at the same time. And that chorus, this is Tony's greatest. Oh, this whole album's Tony's peak as a vocalist. He's really doing a great job on this album, and that chorus is soaring. And I love the little backing vocal hook that goes whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh man, it just charges me up, man. I love it. Love that song. Then the Sabbath Stones, a little more subtle. It's kind of an epic, slow, kind of prog song almost. Don't mind it though. The Battle of Tyr, cool little instrumental. Odin's Courts, kind of acoustic, kind of medieval sounding song. Don't mind it. Better than when Iron Maiden does shit like this. I like it. And then Valhalla. God damn, is Valhalla awesome. Pretty much, if a song's called Valhalla, it usually is awesome. And this is I think this is the most awesome of all awesome Valhalla songs. It is so heavy when it comes in. after Odin's Court, it's powerful. The shades. I love the different shades. And that's what I always loved about Sabbath, going back to like Master of Reality, Paranoid even, with like Planet Caravan, and going into the heavier stuff, the shades. And I love that shit, And I love that it goes from the acoustic to being so heavy. That's great. Feels Good to Me. This is the single from the album. Sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like nothing else on the album. Clearly not part of the Viking concept. It's a I guess you call it a ballad, but it's really not a hair metal ballad. It's more of a soul ballad. That's the thing. It sounds a little kind of like something Whitesnake would do. David Coverdale would have been amazing on this song. But, Tony, it's not really his thing. It's kind of like the opposite of Glenn Hughes. Like, whereas Glenn Hughes would have been great on this song, but not so much the heavy metal songs. Tony's kind of the opposite. Like, he's not great on a song like this, but he does his job. He does his job. And I really like the song. So there, call me lame. I think Feels Good to Me is a beautiful, sexy soul song. And I love the little jazzy solo that Tony does on it too. I love his solos all throughout this album, but this just shows his versatility. This is very different. The same way Jimmy Page could do different kinds of styles. And I think Feels Good to Me just shows that Tony could still expand his vocabulary as a guitarist and songwriter. And I love it. I think it's a great song. And then you got Heaven and Black. Badass song, great way to wrap up this album. I love every song on this album. It's a perfect album. It's great. And I don't normally like concept albums, but this one works for me. I just love the songs. It has the melodies, has the hooks, it has the production. It's a great early 90s metal album. Feels good to me. Sounds good to me. I love it. But then Dio came back. Dio was like, hey, I'll do Sabbath with you again. So they were like, bye, Tony. Bye, Tony Martin. Sorry. Fuck off. So Ronnie comes back, and they're like, yeah, let's get Ronnie. Originally, Cozy Powell was going to play on this, but he hurt himself, so they got Vinny Appleseed back. So it's the Mob Rules lineup again. The Mob Rules lineup again for 1992's Dehumanizer. You got to say it like that, because it's heavy. Dehumanizer. Look at that album cover. And it's as heavy as that album cover looks. This rivals Born Again for heaviest Sabbath album. I'd say Born Again is still the most evil, but this definitely gives it a run for its money for heaviness. This is heavy. It's totally different. It's funny because like the stuff with the Tony Martin stuff sounds Dio-esque, but it's like Dio himself, to his credit, being a very creative artist that kept wanting to change and challenge himself. Dio himself didn't really want to sound like Dio anymore. Same way with Heaven and Hell, he pushed Tony and the band in a different direction. He does that again in 1992. He pushes them into this rawer, darker direction, and even a little doomy, which is interesting because, for the most part, the Sabbath stuff with Dio wasn't that doomy. But now they get a little doomy. They'd get even doomier with him later on. But right now it's just a little doomier, but it's definitely rawer. It's more visceral. Very different from Tear. Very different. And yet, I love this album too. It's like really unfair to compare it to Tear because it's so different. But whereas that's a very lush, clean production, this is very sludgy and raw and dark and heavy. And it sounds very Sabbathy, but like a modern, new 90s Sabbath. So yet again, Tony Iommi is bringing the fucking Black Sabbath sound into another decade. Like what he did with Heaven and Hell, he's doing now with Dehumanizer. And I love it. Computer God right out of the gate. So heavy. Ooh, it's getting darker. Which is just what I want it to happen. That's right. Because we're talking about Black Sabbath. After All the Dead. After Computer God. Great song. Dark. Evil. Really evil sounding. Whoa. TV Crimes. Great upbeat rocker. This sounds kind of like a song that would have opened early 80s Dio Black Sabbath album. But here they make it the third track, and it works. It's cool. Letters from Earth's great. Master of Insanity. Love that song. One of my favorites. Time Machine. All right. Up-tempo song. Sins of the Father. Another one of my favorite songs on the album. Love it. Too Late. My favorite song on the album. Kicks ass. One of Ronnie's greatest vocal lines. I love it. Buried Alive. I can't believe it took Black Sabbath so long to have a song called Buried Alive. But hey, better late than ever. And this is great. Every song's great. Now, I gotta tell you, I used to just think this album was good, but, I thought there was a sameness to all the tracks, and I didn't think the songs were amazing, but I disagree. This album's totally grown on me in recent years, and I love every song on it, and it's a little more subtle. It's kind of sophisticated, but if you kind of get in there, you get into its grooves, and you realize what the band's doing is amazing, what Ronnie's doing is amazing, Tony's still doing amazing solos, amazing riffs, such a talent. It's just so different for them too, but yet still bringing some of the heaviness and darkness that you would want from Sabbath. But a lot of this was, you can tell that this direction and sound was really pushed by Ronnie, because the two albums, the album before, Tear, and then the album afterward, Cross Purposes, they're more similar, slicker productions with keyboards and more in that kind of style that he was doing with Tony Martin. Whereas Dehumanizer, when Ronnie leaves, he leaves the band again, and he takes Vinny Appleseed again with him. Well, it's the same thing again. It's like fucking Vertigo. Just happens again. They go off and they do the next Dio album, Strange Highways, and it's much more like Dehumanizer than Cross Purposes is. Like, you can clearly hear, like Dio took the Dehumanizer along with him. Like, that was his sound that he was developing. He wanted to go in this raw, heavier direction. He even keeps it going with the album after, Angry Machines. But I gotta tell you, Strange Highways, it's even better than Dehumanizer. So I highly recommend that Dio album. That's my second favorite Dio album after Holy Diver. Strange Highways is a masterpiece, and I think Dehumanizer is great, and Strange Highways is even better. So definitely check that out if you're a fan of Dehumanizer, and for some crazy reason you didn't hear Strange Highways. Check that fucking shit out. And then, but we're not going off of Dio. Dio's gonna go off and be awesome, but we're stuck with Tony. And normally that's all right, but we're coming to Cross Purposes, the album that many years ago made a teenage Edwin go, this Tony Martin era stuff doesn't sound so hot. So what do I think about it now, all these years later, and now that I'm open-minded to Tony Martin? 1994 Cross Purposes, which this time has Geezer Butler on bass. So this is the first and only time that Tony Martin and Geezer Butler are on the same album. So that's pretty cool. And there's some guy named Bobby Rondinelli on drums, and you got the Tonys and Geezer, and Geezer adds a little something to the bass. You can hear it's him, and I like no, I don't like this album. Sorry, it's all right. It's definitely it's several notches below Tear. Actually, I think it's a couple notches below Headless Cross. It's just not that good. It's the weakest album they did with Tony Martin. It's all right. There's nothing bad about it. That's the thing. I'm a little reluctant to say it's not a bad album. It's just kind of average. Eyewitness starts off all right, rocking enough. Cross of Thorns, it's all right. I like Psychophobia. I don't know if that's a real word, but it's a real rocking song. I dig that. Virtual Death, it gets kind of into this kind of like grunge thing, like mid-90s, mid-tempo. Everything's kind of sluggish, but not really heavy. And by the middle of the album, it just gets kind of boring. Things pick up a little bit. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, it's all right. I don't like it as much as I did when I was a teenager, though. The only song that I think is really great on this is Evil Eye. Evil Eye is awesome. It's a heavy track, and it's got Eddie Van Halen himself playing lead guitar on it, and it's fucking awesome. So if you want to hear fucking Tony Iommi laying down an awesome riff and Eddie Van Halen shredding all around it, well, then fucking check out Evil Eye, brother. It's a great song, and I wish this whole album was like this. But unfortunately, it's not. So I gotta say, this, in my opinion, is probably like the second weakest Black Sabbath album ever. But, it's not horrible. But the next album is, Forbidden, 1995. Easily the worst Black Sabbath album. Believe me, because at this point, I want to like the Tony Martin stuff, but no, this is shit, and this is a sad way to end the Tony Martin era, and his singing even, it's not that good. He's trying to sound tough and heavier now, and it's just not really him. It doesn't fit his style, and every song's shit on this. The only one song that's kind of alright is a song called Rusty Angels, but it's not like if Dio was singing it, it'd be a better song. Tony can't really do it at this point anymore. And I mean, hell, if Dio was on this album, it'd be a better album. He had a certain level of quality control. He could tell Tony Iommi, hey, that's not so hot. But Tony Martin ain't going to talk up to Tony like that. Tony Iommi had a great run. I pretty much love everything the guy did, from the first Black Sabbath album to Dehumanizer, and then Cross Purposes, and then Forbidden. And you're like, oh, well, you had a good run. But maybe he'll pick things up again. So we don't really get a lot of Black Sabbath releases after this. I can imagine why. Because why would you want more Black Sabbath albums when an album like Forbidden, had the moniker on it? It's kind of, But somehow, people wanted to hear Black Sabbath again because most people didn't even know this album came out. And they wanted Ozzy to be back. So Ozzy came back. They did the reunion album, which was a live concert. But there were 2 new songs. Psycho Man and what was the other song called? Selling My Soul. Actually, I like Selling My Soul. I like that a little bit better than Psycho Man. Psycho Man I didn't really like so much. Sounded kind of like a shitty mid-90s Ozzy song more than Black Sabbath. But at least I actually had Bill Ward playing on it. Even though I like Selling My Soul better, it sounds a little more Sabbathy. Something almost that beat like on Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. But apparently Bill's not really on that. It's a fucking drum machine. But then they actually on the 2000 Tony Iommi solo album, Tony, Ozzy, and Bill Ward play on a track. They actually used the session bassist, Lawrence Cottle, from Headless Cross on it, so there's kind of a connection to Sabbath, but that's the last time you will hear Tony, Ozzy, and Bill Ward. No Geezer, unfortunately, but you get Tony, Ozzy, and Bill Ward on a song, Who's Fooling Who? And that song's great. I dig that actually more than the 2 songs from Reunion. Everything else on the album, the Iommi album, I do not like. It's him trying really hard to sound current, and he totally loses all his personality. Whereas I said in the 80s, in the first half of the 90s, he maintained his personality while updating his sound. Not with the 2000 Iommi album. And it's all like guest singers and like Dave Grohl and it has kind of a goth sound to it. I don't like it. It's a shitty album. Sorry, Tony Iommi. I respect you, but I don't like this album. But Who's Foolin' Who's a really great song. I dig it, and it's a cool kind of final true Black Sabbath song, even if it doesn't have Geezer. And then you got the Dio Years compilation, which had 3 new songs with the Mob Rules lineup, or Dehumanizer lineup again. That's right, Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appleseed came back and played with Tony and Geezer. And the song The Devil Cried, that's a badass tune. Love that song. Shadow of the Wind, love that too. Very doomy, epic. Ear in the Wall, that's good. I love all those songs, especially the first 2. And it sounded fresh. It was doomy, it was dark. It felt like the next step after Dehumanizer, you know? So I was excited, definitely for Heaven and Hell. Now what Heaven and Hell is this lineup. It's Black Sabbath. I mean, they called them Black Sabbath for Dehumanizer and Mob Rules, but now they couldn't use the name because Sharon Osbourne had taken an interest. Suddenly, because she didn't give a fuck about the name Black Sabbath in the 80s. She did not give a shit because there was no money in it. It was more money in solo Ozzy in the 80s, so that's all she cared about. But suddenly in the mid-90s, people wanted a Sabbath reunion with all the grunge artists and stuff. There was kind of a reappreciation of the slow, sludgy, classic Black Sabbath sound. So suddenly there were dollar signs. Suddenly she cared about the Black Sabbath name, you know, and as a result, Ozzy did too. But I don't really think Ozzy cared so much. It's Sharon. We all know it's fucking Sharon. She now wouldn't let them use the name, so they couldn't use the name. I don't know all the details, but that's my theory. That's my guess anyway. So they have to call themselves Heaven and Hell, which makes sense. And so the album title is The Devil You Know. So this is Heaven and Hell, The Devil You Know from 2009. And it's good. It's kind of a grower. I didn't love it at first. Ronnie, he's older here. You know, he didn't have much longer to live, unfortunately. And he sounds older, but he's still trying, you know, and he still has personality, and he still has a majestic quality. And it's very doomy. This is the doomiest thing they've ever done with Ronnie James Dio. Maybe at all. It's like even doomier than Master of Reality because it's really just doom for the most part. Guess Rock and Roll Angels, not quite that doomy, but that's a really cool song. I like it. Bible Black starts off kind of soft, but then gets heavy. Does that trick. Love it. Double the Pains, great song. I mean, this album has really grown on me. In recent years, especially after Dehumanizer really grew on me, this album grew on me as well. And it's a very pure album. I think it's a very pure album made by the elder statesmen of doom and gloom, and they embrace it, and they do a doom album. So if you ever wanted to hear a full-fledged like doom metal album with Ronnie James Dio, well, here you go. And it works for the most part, and it's, like I said, it's kind of subtle. A lot of songs don't hit you right away, but the more you listen to it, the more you get into it. And it's heavy. It's really heavy for a bunch of old guys. Like Follow the Tears, ooh, heavy song. I like it a lot. I think it's a good album, and it's grown on me. And then we get to the final Black Sabbath album, 2013's 13. Unfortunately, Bill Ward is not playing on this. It is not the original Black Sabbath. It is Tony, Geezer, Ozzy, and this cat, Brad Wilk. Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave. So, this album. Okay. It's grown on me a little bit. It has grown on me. My buddy Adam Cerniak was like, you should give this album a chance. It's really just them doing another Doom album. And he knew The Devil You Know grew on me. So he's like, if you like Devil You Know, well, this is kind of like Devil You Know Fozzy. It is, but it isn't. This is the thing. Devil You Know still sounded original. It didn't really sound like an old Black Sabbath album. And Ronnie, even though the man was going to die soon, still sounded like he cared more with his singing. My big problem with 13, not just the flat drumming, not just Rick Rubin's horrible brick-walled production and mastering, a lot of things that people complain about. It's just an ugly, loud-sounding album, just like Metallica's Death Magnetic. But the songs are all very derivative of earlier Sabbath songs. They just sound like old riffs. And, they're not bad, but it's very calculating. It's a very calculated album. And you could tell it's not Tony just doing everything that he would really want to do. But it's not horrible. It has grown on me. I do like the bass. You hear Geezer's bass is nice and loud in the mix. Actually, it's louder in the mix than it was on The Devil You Know. I do like Geezer's bass being so loud. It does pop. But, and Tony, he could always come in with a riff, but this is the most derivative I've ever heard Tony Iommi. So, he's kind of phoning it in. And the end of the beginnings, all right, sounds like Black Sabbath. God is Dead. I used to not like that song, but it's actually grown on me. I think it's one of the better songs. Musically, it's a little interesting and a little different sounding for them. Not as derivative as some of the other songs on it. Although I don't really like the lyrics. I think they're a little bit of a cop-out. Loner, catchy song, probably should have been the lead single in my opinion, but it is very derivative. Zeitgeist, I don't like. It's just like a lesser Planet Caravan. It's like, man, you can't touch Planet Caravan, so don't go there. Age of Reason, good song. I like that. That's got a nice heavy riff, does a few interesting things. Live Forever, Damaged Soul, kind of a bluesy number. I like it, actually. It probably has my favorite Tony Iommi solo on it. Sounds like he actually cares about this one. Dear Father, don't like it. I think it's a sluggish kind of a drag way to end the album. I don't like that they bring in the rain effect from the original Black Sabbath, suggesting that this is somehow a fitting bookend to that masterpiece. No, don't make that comparison. Sorry, Dear Father ain't no way near Black Sabbath, the song Black Sabbath. Don't make that comparison. In fact, the deluxe version has a couple tracks I think are better than some of the songs that are on this album. Methademic, that's a heavy, fast rocker, and it's heavy and kind of modern sounding, but yet still Sabbathy, and that's exactly the kind of song that I felt this album was lacking. So, they definitely should have had that on. And I also like the song Pereira, and I felt that would have been a cooler ending than Dear Father. Just kind of a straightforward, catchy Sabbath song, and also not quite as derivative. But maybe that's why these two tracks didn't make the cut, was because Rick Rubin wanted them to be derivative. But it's grown on me a bit. I definitely would love to hear this be remixed or remastered. Probably make me appreciate the album even more. I don't think it's as good as The Devil You Know, because I think that's a pure album that sounds like it's coming from people really trying to create something and continuing to do something a little different. Whereas this sounds like Sabbath saying, okay, we're going to give stock Sabbath to casual fans, That's what it sounds like to me. But it's all right. It's grown on me. It's definitely better than, I like it better in Cross Purposes, and definitely it's better than Forbidden. So that's easily the worst Sabbath album. And that's it. No more Black Sabbath after that. And I will just say one other thing, since I pretty much hit everything that Tony Iommi did, I am going to just recommend also, if you like Seventh Star and you like his collaboration with Glenn Hughes, he started work on an album in the mid-90s, the 96 DEP Sessions, which finally came out in 2004. It really sounds unfinished. There's some cool shit. I like the song Gone. And, it's good kind of just more basic style classic rock from Glenn and Tony, but there's some good riffs, some good ideas. It just sounds very unfinished. It's worth listening to. But I'll be honest, I don't really think it's that great. What's better is a 2005 album that Tony and Glenn Hughes did called Fused. And I dig it. Again, like all these albums, heavy metal albums from the 2000s, it's horribly brick-walled. And the mix and the mastering, everything's too loud and there's not a lot of dynamics. And it's too bad because in this case, I can hear it's a good album. I like the songs. I think Glenn is mixed too loud too. His vocals are a little too loud. It's like a modern sounding metal album, a little more modern sounding than I like. But the songs are good, it's good hooks, and, it showed that Tony was continuing to kind of push boundaries a little bit and challenge himself and kind of move with the times. And it's a good album. I recommend Fused if you want to check out, especially if you like Seven Star. Kind of supports this idea that this is what solo Tony Iommi sounds like. He likes this mixture of a kind of soul singer with more slick, modern, melodic metal. Like that's his non-Black Sabbath sound. Infused kind of supports this. And it's definitely worth checking out. And that's really it. That's it. It'd be great. He said Tony might remix Born Again, and I'd love to hear that. And I love this band, and I'm looking forward, me and perhaps my co-host Booberry, I'm going to do the Halloween special, so you got to look forward to that. My second Black Sabbath Halloween special, which will be a Rankorama, where I will put them all, everything, every goddamn album that has the words Black and Sabbath on them will be in the Rankorama. So I will do that. I'm getting drunk. I'm going to turn a light on so I don't fall down on my fucking face. And what a great band! Aren't we lucky to live in a world where Tony Iommi just kept making cool music? I'm happy they did that. So rock on, Tony. You rock on for watching this long-ass video, which started off in daytime and ended in the nighttime. You're awesome. I'm awesome. This scotch is awesome. Peace out.